Let me ask you about another highly controversial area, which is press regulation. If Lord Leveson comes through next month and suggests some kind of legal underpinning for a new system, it's quite clear that he is going to face an absolute barrage of hostility from most of the major newspapers, and they're already firing the opening salvos at the moment. Is the Labour Party going to stick with what Lord Leveson says, or is the Labour Party going to sit back and think, well, actually, perhaps self-regulation needs to be given another chance?
Well, I don't think self-regulation should be given another chance. And obviously, Lord Leveson has heard a great many revelations from the McCanns, the Dowlers, the Watsons. It's clear that business as usual cannot obtain. And I think it's disappointing of the newspapers to, before even Leveson has come out, to say, we want the status quo, because the status quo has failed. There is not a proper press complaint system which ensures that where the press get it wrong, the individual can complain and it will be independently looked at.
The Telegraph, Sunday Telegraph today says, we don't want business as usual. But the trouble is, once you get statutory regulation of any kind, it's the beginning, it's the slippery slope. Politicians will, over time, push for more and more control over the press, and it is inevitable that we will have the press shackled by politicians who simply don't want embarrassing stories to come out.
Well, in fact, self-regulation is business as usual, and that is what has failed. And we don't want any inhibition on press freedom. I mean, I've been in opposition long enough to have a view that if the government were to control the press, I mean, that's terrible. I've always argued for press freedom. But I think that we need empowering we may need a statute to underpin a truly independent press complaint system, a bit like the independent system that deals with complaints against solicitors, so that it's independent of government, but also you don't have them judging their own cases. But also, I do think that we ought to be clear there should be no prior restraint. This is about complaints after the press have reported something, not somebody nosing around in the editorial decisions.
We have seen some prominent politicians come out on the other side of the argument already. Boris Johnson would be a good example. How important do you think it is to get cross-party agreement? And do you think it's possible to get cross-party agreement on this?
Well, I think there is every possibility of getting cross-party agreement, and that's what we should have. This should not be a political football. We don't want the press doing divide and rule amongst politicians. We don't want politicians wanting to settle scores against the press who've been bruising them. I mean, we need to have a cool head here. We need to look at what Leveson proposes and hopefully take it forward if it's sensible and proportionate. But the status quo is not acceptable.